Hi. So I will be creating a series of microservice tutorials covering various aspects. And I have already created a playlist in which I will be adding all the topics related to microservices like authentication, debugging, logging, then deployment and communication between microservices. Hit the subscription button to get notified for all the upcoming videos. And the link for the playlist is provided in the description below. In this session, we will see how two microservices communicate with each other mainly over HTTP protocols. So there are various types of implementation. Later we will see how to communicate between two microservices using SQS, RabbitMQ, Kafka and any other messaging queue. So we all know that microservice can be created in any language. So I have chosen mainly Express.js, which is in Node, and Spring Boot, which is in Java. So for Express, I have used this Express generator. So you can directly visit this URL and get started with Express. So it's very easy. So you just need to do nps express generator, then npm install, and then you just need to start the server using npm start. So this will give you the basic structure. So whatever changes is required, we will see in the later part of the tutorial. And the Spring Boot is created using spring.io quick start. So you can just visit this and use start.spring.io. It will take you to this URL. Here I have just chosen 2.3.0. and one more thing what you need to do is we will keep everything default. I have chosen here var, and here I have added the dependency Spring Web. If you don't add this dependency, then later you need to go to this POM file and add the Spring Boot Starter Web dependency. So I will provide the link for Express Generator and Spring Quick Start Guide in the description. So once we downloaded it, what you need to do is I have opened the Node.js application in Visual Studio Code. So you just go and run npm start. So we can see that it got started, and if you go to bin www, we can see the default port is 3000. So if you visit localhost 3000, it will give you the Express welcome to Express screen. And if you use 3000/users, it will give you users 35. How this is generated is here slash, it will invoke the index.js, which is index file, and title is as express, which we have already seen. But if you use /users, it will go to users router. So by default the blank is users, and I have used a random number between 100. So every time if we refresh it, it will generate some random numbers like users and 27. So this has nothing to do with communication. We are just setting up the APIs in Node.js and even in spring.io or the Spring Boot application. Then we will go to our Spring application. So in Spring application, what we need to do is my application is already running. So we just need to run maven spring boot, then run, means maven run. And in demo application, I had just copied this part here. So if you use localhost 8080, it runs on Tomcat server by default. So it will return you hello by default, hello world, and if you provide some name, then it will return your name or the name that you provided in the URL. I had overridden it and changed it to address, and it will give me address for the user ID and whatever the ID we had provided in value ID. So if we go here, so we can see address for the user ID Paul, or we can use for the user ID 25. Sorry, the colon mark is coming from here. Okay, so as of now our two APIs or the two servers are ready, which is running on port 3000, the Node.js server, and the Spring Boot server is running on Tomcat 8080 port. Now what we will do is like I had added another get mapping. So the detailed explanation of get, post, put, patch will be provided in the upcoming tutorials. So here I had used another URL which is like path address then with user ID, and it is also of type get. And what we will do is like in the path we will fetch the user ID, and depending on user ID we need to call the respective database or any other subsequent REST API or downstream microservice to get the details. So in most of the cases it will be the database which is attached to this microservice, so it will fetch those details like pin, street, city and all. So I have hard coded it. So how to connect to the database from any microservice is beyond the scope of this tutorial. We will cover it in our upcoming tutorials. So I have hard coded it and it returns a hash map. So by default this hash map will be converted to JSON by Spring Boot application. So it's like user address. So user address will have user ID and then address. So address will have pin, street, city. So if you go to this URL, so you can see that it returns 51 user ID with pin, city, Bangalore, street, Paul Street. If you want to see it in a much better way, we can use Postman. And we can see in a much better JSON format. So this is the user ID, pin, city, street. So this is the second API which has been exposed by our Spring Boot application. Now this API will be consumed by microservice 1, which is our user details. So what I have done here is like I had written another service method or service class which exposes get address, and it internally calls the REST API localhost 8080 then address, and we will pass the user ID. And this returns a promise method. So on resolve we will pass the data, and if some error is there like 500 or 404 or 501 or any authentication error, then we will reject it saying that with the error message and the error code. This is imported in user.js get address, and get address we will pass the user ID from the path parameter. So this is how it looks. I will fetch it from Postman. So what it did is like it fetched the address from the Spring Boot application or the microservice 2, and the order is being fetched by microservice 1, which is connected to its own database. For simplicity I have hard coded it here. So get address, it calls the service, the HTTP call, then it get the address, and here we had appended the order. So address is this address and order is order ID, delivery date, which we will again fetch from the respective microservice 1 database. And then the user details has been sent back to the REST API. So this is one of the way by which we can communicate between microservices. That's all for this tutorial. If you like my video, then don't forget to hit the like button and don't forget to share it. Thank you. See you again next time.